Yield farming, a land of opportunity or a treacherous trap that will devour all your money through permanent loss. Or worse yet, a rug pull. How do you protect your hard-earned fiat you've been mining all week at the office from disappearing into the abyss? That is exactly what I'll show you today. First, I want to dismiss a common myth I see a lot in the DeFi community. High APYs are not an indicator of a rug pull. Some of the best DEXs I know started with ridiculously high APYs and are still around today. If you see a high APY, it just means you discovered the DEX early on and should do more due diligence. Which, if you're watching this, you are probably going to do anyway, right? Let's get on with the show. First step is to understand how things fail. Get familiar with decentralized exchanges. Read up on impermanent loss. Understand the formula. Play with some impermanent loss calculators to understand worst case scenarios. Once you feel comfortable, it's time to jump in. Use a reputable DEX. Do not use one that popped up yesterday promising 1000% returns per day. What do I mean by a reputable DEX? Uniswap, SushiSwap, PancakeSwap, QuickSwap, ViperSwap. Depending on your ecosystem, it may be a different one. As I said before, check with the community on Reddit or Discord. As an aside, Sushi is one of my favorites because it supports the most platforms. But its interface is a bit too user-friendly. Hiding important detail we'll need to understand the effect of impermanent loss. So for this example, I'll be using ViperSwap on Harmony instead. Set aside a little bit of your budget, $500 should be enough, and put it in a pool. Play around with the DEX, get comfortable with the interface. I recommend doing this on a platform with low fees, where making a mistake will only cost you a few cents. Start safe, use reputable pools with known tokens. The point is to learn the system, not to triple your money in the first 3 days. Observe what happens to your money. Note the amount of coins you put in, and observe how that changes over time. The instructions shown here are for ViperSwap, but since most DEXs are basic clones of each other, your DEX of choice will probably look very similar. Take notes. Were you correct with your estimate of impermanent loss? Do you feel comfortable with the risk? Can you handle it emotionally? Maybe you should dial down a bit, or maybe you should be a little bit more aggressive. Once you understand one DEX, you understand them all. What's important in this exercise is to understand the math, where the risk comes from, and how the rug pull can be executed. The most basic rug pull involves minting infinite tokens and dumping them on the market, which in turn lowers their price. Your pool keeps rebalancing itself until it's only holding one of the tokens in your pair, which is now worthless. It's important to understand that you can only mint tokens if you're the owner of the contract. This means that pools where both coins are reputable are the safest, since the only thing you can lose is the interest. The exception to this is some auto-compounding DEXs, since they sometimes wrap what would otherwise be a safe token in their own contract. Pairs where at least one coin is questionable are not safe. It's for this reason you should be careful when buying into a native token of a DEX you know nothing about. Next part is to do your own research. This is the part in crypto everyone talks about, but no one really knows what it means. Don't limit your research to a couple YouTube videos by a 15-year-old claiming to have discovered a hidden gem. You want to research the project's team, see their reputation, and their track record. If they're anonymous, who can vouch for them? Does someone more reputable know their identities? I typically start my research by visiting Rugdog. They audit smart contracts for DEXs on multiple ecosystems, looking for common exploits, such as ability to mint DEXs tokens, effectively causing inflation, which is the most common method to do a rug pull. Other exploits exist as well, such as a migrator function that can swap your contract out from underneath you for a different one. Fun fact, PancakeSwap itself is a migrator function, but its affiliation with Binance makes this exploit much less likely. Rugdog doesn't catch all issues, as already mentioned last week when talking about Iron Finance. But if Rugdog lists it as high risk, your research ends here. Search for another project. There is also Certic, which has a fancier UI but only covers larger projects that explicitly apply for an audit. These official auditors have become more of a marketing move by rapidly growing projects to either gain public trust or regain it after losing it. Oh look, a familiar face. You get the point. Search Twitter, Reddit, and Medium announcements of partnerships with a larger trusted entity, such as Solana, Alameda, or Binance. Make sure the news comes from the trusted entity itself, not the project you're researching. The final step is to minimize exposure. If you choose to participate in new DEX, do not participate in the pool with its native token. It will be the first pool to crash when the interest drops and first wave yield farmers leaves. This cycle is as predictable as the seasons. Prefer pools with both known tokens from well-known projects. Pay attention to pool liquidity. Do not join any pool where your share will be more than 1%. Otherwise, you may get left holding the bag. Prefer pairs that move together and stablecoins. The examples are used for decentralized exchanges, but the steps I outlined can be applied to other DeFi products as well. For example, let's say you're dealing with lending platform like Aave or Anchor. Your first step is to understand how things fail. On lending platforms, that would be liquidation. Read the rules very carefully, play with the interface, and calculate the liquidation price beforehand. You'll often be surprised to discover that it's much easier to get liquidated than you think. On Anchor, a 30% move in price of Luna is enough. Understand visual indicators and check them regularly. Second step, as before, is DYOR. For lending platforms, RugDoc is useless, so you're limited to researching their reputation and partnerships with larger entities. Luckily, lending platforms don't pop up every day like Texas. Third, as before, minimize exposure. Prefer stablecoins and Bitcoin as collateral because they move less. Stablecoins tend to retain their peg, but do be aware that they don't always do, especially in periods of volatility. That's it for this episode. I'll see you next time.